You are watching the World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bawa. Let's take you through the top stories you need to know. External Affairs Minister Dr. S Jaishankar met Qatar's Prime Minister and Foreign Minister in Doha and discussed issues including the Gaza situation and Qatari investments in India. US President Joe Biden's much-criticised performance in the US presidential debate against Republican frontrunner Donald Trump has raised eyebrows. Several analysts claim that Biden could be replaced by the ruling Democrats in the US presidential election. Iran will hold a runoff presidential election, pitting a little-known reformist against a hardline former nuclear negotiator after results released showed the lowest ever poll turnout in the Islamic Republic's history. The United Kingdom is conducting a general election on the 4th of July, and exit polls have predicted the Labour Party could win this election after 15 years of Conservative rule. But many Indian parents in the UK are worried after the Labour Party has proposed to start taxing private education in the UK. France has taken a step closer to delivering what was once seen as an unthinkable nightmare, a far-right government taking power in Paris for the first time. Exit polls show Marine Le Pen's far-right National Party scored historic gains to win the first round of France's parliamentary election. Well, our big focus. External Affairs Minister Dr. S Jaishankar met Qatar's Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman bin Jassim Al Thani in Doha and reviewed bilateral relations with a focus on politics, trade, investment, energy, technology, culture, as well as people-to-people ties. Dr. Jaishankar also exchanged views on regional and global issues with Sheikh Mohammed, who holds the portfolio as Foreign Minister there. Meanwhile, this was the External Affairs Minister's third overseas visit since he assumed charge for the second time. The first one, as you know, was to Sri Lanka and the second to UAE. But after returning from Qatar, Dr. Jaishankar will go to Astana to represent India in the SCO summit. Well, for further clarity, we have with us senior international journalist and West Asia expert, Dr. Wael Awad. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on the World 24/7. After hectic behind-the-scenes diplomacy about just 5 months ago, Dr. Jaishankar's visit comes after Qatar released 8 former Indian Navy personnel who were sentenced to death after being arrested. How significant do you believe this trip is? And is there something to read between the lines?
Thank you and good morning to you. I believe it is a very important visit, and I think the release of the 8 Indian prisoners is a history now, because the relation between the two countries has been fostering for years, and also the India have a great importance of the oil security, especially from Qatar, where you're having more than 48% of Indian requirement of NDP coming from Qatar, and in terms of bilateral investment, in terms of defense cooperation, in terms of the Gulf security. These are issues to be taken in consideration, especially with India asserting its position in the presence of the Gulf country. Therefore, we see this visit as a very important on the bilateral between the two countries, and also in general in the relation India and the GCC countries.
Right. Just picking up on what you said, Dr. Awad, Qatar is home to about 8 lakh strong Indian diaspora. It's emerged as an important commercial partner for India. We've got a two-way trade currently worth $20 billion a year. We also know India imports gas from Qatar. But you think Qatar has been increasingly seeking to attract India's attention amid New Delhi's bonhomie with the UAE?
I think most of the Gulf countries are trying to woo India into their sphere of influence. I think the GCC countries have a common position in regards to the India oil and food security and the diaspora. Therefore, you see, you have more than 8 million Indians are in the Gulf country, where you have more than 14 million Indians visiting this part of the world, and there are more than $73 billion of revenue annually comes to India from the Gulf countries. So therefore, I think it's important. The most important part that Qatar is one of the largest investors in the world, and I think that's what India is looking for, make in India. That is more important for India as well. And I think Qatar is keen on investing in India, like the UAE, like the Saudi Arabia. More important also, Qatar hosts the Afghanistan Taliban in their territories, including also Hamas leadership. So I think India concerned with West Asia development, especially with the war on Gaza by the Israel, and also on the development with Doha, where we have a meeting on the Taliban for the first time, that there are 20 international agencies are meeting. I think that first-hand information for India, it's of a great importance if we also take into consideration the foreign minister is going to Astana to attend the Shanghai summit. So therefore, it's quite important, I think, India to have full information before sitting on the table.
Well, thank you so much, as always, Dr. Awad, for joining us on The World 24/7. Early polling is starting to trickle in after US President Joe Biden and Donald Trump's first presidential debate, and it doesn't look like good news for the incumbent. Following Thursday night, when Biden's shaky performance unnerved top donors and voters alike, one survey found Democratic-leaning voters are now less likely to swing for Biden in November's election. The share of Democrats who do not think Biden should be running for re-election jumped 10 points, according to a separate poll. Here are the details for you.
Let's make some noise one more time for President Joe Biden!
At 81, Biden is the oldest person to hold office in the history of the United States. And having already faced scrutiny over his age and ability to run in this year's elections, Friday's presidential debate was meant to serve as a saving grace for Biden to prove his capability to perform as a leader.
What I do know, I know how to tell the truth.
Biden fails to impress the voters. There is now tremendous pressure on him to quit the presidential race.
The question every voter should be asking themselves today is not whether Joe Biden can survive a 90-minute debate performance, but whether America can survive 4 more years of crooked Joe Biden in the White House. In fact, I don't know if we can really survive 5 more months. Come here today.
Joe Biden is yet to be confirmed as the nominee, and after his performance at the debate, the question on everyone's mind is whether he is truly fit to run. And if not, who will Trump be running against? A new poll has found Vice President Kamala Harris as the top choice to replace President Joe Biden should he abandon his re-election campaign. A Data for Progress flash poll conducted on Friday found Harris was the most popular choice to replace Joe Biden. The poll surveyed 1,011 US likely voters, including 387 Democratic likely voters, and has a margin of error of 3 percentage points. The poll revealed that 39% of Democratic respondents would choose Kamala Harris if the Democratic Party was to hold a convention to find a replacement to Biden. California Governor Gavin Newsom's name is doing the rounds as a possible replacement. Newsom is known to support the Democrats outside of his home state. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who has been in favor of stricter gun laws, repealing abortion bans, and backing universal preschool, has long been seen as a potential successor to Biden. Whitmer has already hinted at her interest in the presidency in the past by saying that she would see voters in 2028. In recent tweets, Republicans have also shared their predictions. Republican US lawmaker Ted Cruz highlighted his past speculation of former First Lady Michelle Obama replacing Biden as president. And former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley has expressed that Biden will be replaced by a younger and more vibrant candidate. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has shown no signs of dropping out of the presidential race and continues to vouch for his candidacy.
I know I'm not a young man. State the obvious. Well, I know. Well, I don't. Folks, I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth. I know I know right from wrong. And I know how to do this job. Folks, I give you my word as a Biden, I would not be running again if I didn't believe with all my heart and soul I can do this job. Because quite frankly, the stakes are too high. The stakes are too high.
With Samya Afsar, Parmeshwar Bawa for NDTV. And for the latest from Ground Zero, we have with us Andrew Cluster, live from New York. Andrew's also was the Deputy Chief Analytics Officer for President Barack Obama's 2012 re-election campaign. Thanks so much, Andrew, for making time for us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Many experts actually predicted that the first post-debate surveys are likely to overstate the magnitude of Biden's decline, just as they oversold his lead after his first debate against Donald Trump 4 years ago. What's your take, Andrew?
So, at this stage, it's one bad debate performance. I think that there's certainly the possibility of recovery, and I don't think Biden should be counted out yet. Although certainly, the latest news cycle over the past couple of days since the debate has helped Trump and hurt Biden. I think it is. Biden is difficult to replace for reasons that are both technical and political. The technical reasons, one, it would be easiest if Biden were to step aside. There's no sign of that happening. If he did, if he were pressured to step aside or decided to step aside, then the Democratic National Committee would have to either change the rules or implement existing rules to select a new candidate.
Right.
And there's no consensus among who that candidate should be. The survey that you just showed that the leading candidate, Kamala Harris, who is the best known candidate, is supported by less than half of those who were surveyed as Biden's replacement.
Right.
So it's not at all clear that there's someone waiting in the wings who would be a consensus choice. And it's also not at all clear that whoever is selected would win more votes than Biden. So it would be challenging to pull off, but not impossible.
An exciting run-up to the November election indeed. Top party members are not denying that Biden had a bad night, but they've increasingly pointed to other factors beyond Biden's age or cognitive abilities to argue that the US president isn't to fault for his debate performance, including that he was actually over-prepared, that CNN moderators didn't adequately fact-check Trump, and that his most senior advisors are responsible for his weak showing. But Andrew, even though Joe Biden's cognitive and physical fitness has left quite an impression not just on US respondents but world over, what do you think the plan of action will be over the next few days? Are Democrats finding more talking points to shift the discussion away from Biden?
Yeah, I think that, the reality is that Trump misspeaks and says things that are inaccurate or untrue far more frequently than Biden, but it is Biden is held to a higher standard than Trump. For voters who are looking for competence are concerned about Biden's performance. Voters who are looking for competence in the White House are not Trump supporters. They were never Trump supporters. So that's why misspeaking is a bigger problem for Biden than it is for Trump.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us on the World 24/7 with that quick analysis regarding the November election. Well, Donald Trump has been busy with the election campaign, but if the 78-year-old becomes the president of the United States again, he might not see his wife Melania Trump much in action. Now, as per reports, Melania Trump has made a deal with the former US president. Melania has made a deal with her husband that if he wins the presidency, she will not have to be on First Lady duty 24/7. This is what a source was quoted as saying, and the report added that the former First Lady has made the deal as she wants to spend more time with her son, Barron Trump, who will reportedly move to a university soon in New York. Switching our attention now to Iran, where they'll hold a runoff presidential election, pitting a little-known reformist against a hardline former nuclear negotiator, after results showed the lowest ever poll turnout in the Islamic Republic's history. More than 60% of voters cast no ballot in the race that saw reformist Masoud Pezeshkian beat Saeed Jalifi, who actually competed alongside two other hardliners. With Jalili now alone in facing the cardiac surgeon, Pezeshkian's campaign would need to draw voters to the July 5th runoff in an election they've otherwise not taken part in as public anger hardens, following years of Iran facing economic hardships and mass protests under its theocracy. A quick update from the United Kingdom now, where on the final weekend of campaigning ahead of the UK general election on Thursday, both Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the man who is fighting for his job at 10 Downing Street, Labour leader Keir Starmer, have hit the Temple Trail to woo British Hindu voters. While 44-year-old Sunak was at the Baptistry Swaminarayan Mandir in Neaston on Sunday to promise to keep trying to make the community proud, 61-year-old Keir Starmer, well, Starmer chose another North London Swaminarayan temple in Kingsbury. He was there on Friday to reiterate his commitment to building a strategic partnership with India. To France now. Well, France has taken a step closer to delivering what was once seen as an unthinkable nightmare. A far-right government taking power in Paris for the first time. Marine Le Pen's national rally made big gains in the first round of a snap election that could see political orthodoxy across Europe and beyond, with implications for markets and global security that will actually be hard to predict as per analysts at this stage. According to early estimates by pollsters Ipsos, the far-right National Rally is on course to win 34% of Sunday's vote, while French President Emmanuel Macron's centrist alliance suffered staggering losses. They were predicted to come third with 20.3% of vote. The left-wing alliance, meanwhile, also made a strong showing. Ross Cullen has the latest from Paris.
President Macron's decision to call a snap election was seen as a great gamble, and there is no doubt about it. On Sunday evening local time, after the release of the preliminary results, it's a gamble that has failed. France's far-right populist party, the National Rally, is now the preeminent political force in France, winning the first round of the French election and all but certain to have the greatest number of seats in the National Assembly after next week's decisive second round of voting on the 7th of July. Speaking on Sunday evening local time after the first projection of the results came out, Marine Le Pen, the party's figurehead, said that democracy has spoken. We are the true change the country needs. She urged her supporters to vote for the party in the second round next week. And we also heard from the party that came second, a coalition of the left wing, the far left and the Greens and the Socialists, the New Popular Front. Their spokesman Jean-Luc Mélenchon also speaking on Sunday evening local time, and he said that we have inflicted a heavy defeat on Emmanuel Macron's political project. We are the party of human rights, calling for all supporters to vote against the National Rally next week and vote for his political project. And we did also hear from one of the spokesmen for Emmanuel Macron's centrist alliance, and he did say that he urged supporters to vote for the moderate centre, not to vote for the far left and left-wing coalition, not to vote for the far right either, and to stick with the presidential majority in the centre. But there is no doubt about it, Emmanuel Macron completely humbled, his political project completely humbled as well, taking his party from 171 seats in the last parliament, the biggest party in the National Assembly, to a projection of just 70 seats in third place. It's going to be very difficult for the president to see out his remaining 3 years of his term with any tranquility. He asked for clarity and serenity. That is very unlikely, because he is all but certain to have to work with a prime minister from a completely different political ideology come July the 8th. Ross Cullen, NDTV, Paris.
Well, news and updates continue in a moment, right after this very short break. Well, the UK is conducting a general election on the 4th of July, and exit polls have predicted the Labour Party could win this election after 15 years of Conservative rule. But many Indian parents in the UK are worried after the Labour Party has proposed to start taxing private education. And if the Labour Party does tax private education, Indian parents will have to pay about 20% more, or as Radhika Iyer finds out, remove their children from existing independent schools. Nearly 2 lakh signatures by parents in the UK to stop the Labour Party from applying VAT or tax on private education in the UK. A big chunk of these parents are Asians, Indians, who make multiple sacrifices to make better education available for their children. Public school education is free in the UK, but Indian parents make choices. 7-year-old Riva loves her school and wouldn't miss a day of it. Her parents, Rashmita and Vamsi, agreed to stop having more children so Riva could get all the attention and support she needs, which in a state school could be limiting because of the increased teacher and pupil ratio.
100% it's going to affect our budgets very drastically, and we will have to rethink whether this is something we can continue to afford or not. And I think one of the biggest problems with this decision is that it's going to further burden state schools, because they're not going to be parents who are going to be able to afford, they are parents who are working crazy up to, be able to afford private school. And those people are not going to be able to afford it. And state schools are actually going to be burdened more because of this. They're already stressed, and any relief that they might get from extra funds that are coming there is going to get taken away by the burden of the extra students that are going to have to attend state school.
There are close to 2,500 private and independent schools across the UK. A recent survey of 2021 revealed that 42% of the pupils in these private and independent schools are of Asian or Indian background, taking extra tuitions beyond school hours.
Question is not about the affordability completely. It is actually about education and the fact that it's a social benefit and it should not be taxed. All the private school parents are contributing towards the state education in the form of taxes, and in addition are paying for the fees for their child.
Had this kind of
Labour leader Keir Starmer has said there is no evidence private schools will close under the party's plans to add VAT to fees.
Very important that this is not.
Guy Ayling has been the head teacher at private schools for over a decade in Devon in England. He finds Asian and particularly Indian pupils extremely hardworking and career-oriented. The move to tax private education may mean that fees could go up from £15,000 a year to £18,000.
Taxing any education is regressive, and our nation would be an outlier if it went down that path. But I can see no good at all from raising such a tax. It would reduce social mobility, it would reduce accessibility and punish hard-working parents.
Radhika Iyer in London, NDTV.
Meanwhile, this year, the ASEAN summit will be held in Laos, and this country in our neighbourhood is a key ally, having deep cultural and economic ties. My colleague Mohammad Ghazali spoke to the Indian ambassador Prashant Agarwal in Laos as to what will be India's focus in this summit. Here's what he said.
Okay, so we are here in Laos DPR, and we have got the ambassador, Mr. Agarwal, who will speak to about the ASEAN summit, which is going to be hosted here later this year, and how has India's Act East policy performed in the last 10 years. Thanks for speaking to us, sir. First of all, ASEAN summit later this year. India has been attending many summits. What's the significance of this particular summit, and also, can you just also share about the India's cultural relations with Laos?
This year, 2024, is a very special year because we are marking 10 years of our Act East policy, which was formulated under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. And a very active and dedicated implementation of this Act East policy has resulted in our comprehensive strategic partnership with ASEAN. So that is a very significant milestone. This year, ASEAN Summit and related summits will be held in Lao PDR in Vientiane, including the ASEAN India Summit and East Asia Summit, because Lao is a chair. The theme for their chairmanship is promoting resilience and connectivity, which are our shared priorities. We have been engaging with ASEAN in building our connectivity in several dimensions: digital connectivity, people-to-people connectivity, connectivity in maritime domain, and so on. So we look forward to further progress and strengthening of these dimensions in the coming year.
Okay. Of all the initiatives which the government of India has taken in the last 10 years, some domestic initiatives which has become an extended arm of the foreign policy, what I could remember of is one is digital payment initiative. The Prime Minister has also spoken about in different countries. What has been the status here in Laos as far as the digital payment initiative is concerned?
For the government of Laos PDR, building digital infrastructure is also a very high priority, because obviously creating digital infrastructure allows people who are far-flung and people who need support to be brought into the financial inclusion. And India's own digital public infrastructure has demonstrated spectacular capacities in this regard. Its trustworthiness, its scalability, its cost effectiveness are all huge pluses. We have been working with specific initiatives with the government of Laos area to work together to see how we can share experiences and benefit by each other's work and experiences.
Well, thank you for investing your time and watching this edition of The World 24/7. News and updates continue on NDTV 24/7 as always.